Now, following that in-depth report on South Africa's big building plans over the next couple of years, over the next few weeks, Newsnight is going to be hosting a series of panel discussions on infrastructure development in South Africa. It's an important topic. And tonight we're going to focus on some of the big challenges facing the projects aimed at driving and obviously improving our economy. So to get the ball rolling, I welcome the Public Enterprises Minister Malusi Gigaba, along with Lullu Krugel from KPMG and eNCA commentator Angelo Fick. To all of you, welcome. Thank you very much for joining us. Minister, I know that you're from the ANC List Conference, or fresh there from in Pretoria. I would love to ask you what happened today, but I know that you're not going to tell me anything. So let's get straight to the substance of the debate if we can. I'm enjoying the smile. I'd like to start off with what the long-term goal here is behind all these billions that we're going to spend. All this investment, ultimately, what is this going to do for the country and its people?
The long-term objective of all of these plans is to stimulate demand in the economy, to ensure that the South African economy can grow on the back of infrastructure development. We're taking a long-term view so that instead of us developing infrastructure as a response to the demand, we're actually stimulating the demand and ensuring that the economy can then grow on the back of that, and in the process, therefore, create jobs, develop skills, and industrialize the economy. Those three key things are very crucial for South Africans to understand, because you cannot create sustainable and decent jobs, you cannot develop critical skills, and neither can you industrialize the economy unless you move the South African economy away from the heavy reliance on the services sector as well as the mining sector, and create industries that are going to ensure that there is increased growth.
Across many sectors, we have a creaking, aging infrastructure in South Africa. You will concede that. Are we not leaving this 20 years too late?
No, because the infrastructure that's being developed is both responding to that aging infrastructure, but at the same time it's creating new infrastructure capacity that transcends far beyond the needs of the economy at the present moment, the capacity currently required. And you see, the critical invention of the present infrastructure program, one, it's long-term planning. So we are planning for our economy beyond the short-term or even medium-term horizon. Secondly, it's coordination to ensure that at the level of government and even the state-owned companies, there is no silo practices. We actually coordinate our efforts. And thirdly, it's integration, so that we look at each project not only in relation to itself and the needs it must respond to, but we look at it in relation to other projects that depend on it. We look at it in relation to other provinces and other sectors in the economy.
It's a grand vision that you're outlining for us. Many questions coming from that, but eNCA commentator Angelo Fick, is this development plan, in your opinion, well thought out? Is it going to achieve these big desired results that Minister Gigaba is referring to?
Well, it certainly strikes one as a well thought out program, and particularly its long-term vision. There are some questions that one would have to ask in relation to other developing economies that have tried this formula before, and some have succeeded at them and some have failed. The emphasis on economic growth should perhaps be unpacked and interrogated. The Nobel Prize winning economist Amartya Sen, for example, argues that measuring development by economic growth is perhaps sometimes farcical, because you can have economic growth and have absolutely no sort of narrowing of the social inequality gap as you've had in India, and you can have low economic growth and still have greater equality as you would have had in Brazil. And another concern that one would have is, while these are long-term plans, and that is particularly valuable about them, we also have to be concerned about an emerging economy, a developing economy, having to respond to entirely unpredictable elements in the global economy that have hit other economies other than South Africa before this.
But we have no choice, surely, but to proceed with this.
Well, if the state runs as it runs, surely we as citizens have to, ask questions about beyond the next 5 years in an electoral year, beyond, the next 10 years, to what happens in the 20 years from now.
Lullu Krugel, let me bring you in. ultimately, the minister was saying that this is also about creating jobs, 11 million jobs by 2030. Will these grand plans actually achieve that?
The 11 million jobs is the target of the National Development Plan, that's a target that we need to get to if we really want to address the unemployment problem in South Africa. All of it can't come from this, and I don't think it's government's intention that that should be the case. However, if we were to respond what investors are telling us, what their concerns are when looking at investing in South Africa, we realize that these are some steps that we need to take. It's not going to be the job solution for everything. It should be seen as a mechanism to spur economic growth, to attract investment, because that's where we will get the long-term job creation opportunities from. This is a means to an end and not the end in itself.
Minister, how did you arrive at the set of priorities that have been outlined in this plan, and are you convinced that this integrated mix is the right mix?
We are convinced that it's the right mix. We engaged in a very rigorous process looking at the economic and social infrastructure programs, the municipal infrastructure priorities of different municipalities, provinces, and even the state-owned companies and different government departments. And we then asked ourselves, what is it exactly that South Africa needs for our country to grow and to move forward? And it was out of that rigorous engagement that we came to this conclusion that we need to prioritize these projects and cluster them into different strategic integrated projects, so that we don't look at each project on its own merit, but in relation to the impact it must make in its own cluster. So that when you look at the Northern Mineral Belt, which is our SIP1, we say you have a mining you have mining projects emerging there. You have massive coal and platinum deposits in that area. And how do we organize our infrastructure so that we can benefit from this? At the end of the day, we were not looking at the country in relation to just the next 5 years. We were looking at it in relation to the next 20 or even 30 years, so that we can develop programs and projects, one, that have sustainability and can keep our economy growing on a long-term basis, but secondly, which can give certainty to investors about.
Are you convinced that certainty will be derived, given Angelo's point that in an unpredictable global economy like this, long-term planning carries inherent risk?
We are convinced that it will be realized, because one of the challenges is that South Africa is an opportunity. The challenge which arises from the integration of the South African economy in the global economy will be resolved through industrialization, infrastructure development, and even the beneficiation programs in our mining sector.
All right. Let me interrupt you there. Angelo, the minister, as he must, is talking this up. Are you convinced that we have the right mix in terms of those priorities?
I think the challenge for the government lies in convincing ordinary South Africans that they will see the particular benefits as outlined in the project. So large,
such as jobs.
Well, jobs and an improvement in their lives. And there are real challenges at the level of the coalface delivery of many of these projects in municipalities that we know have had endless numbers of qualified audits, that have skill shortages, that are currently unable to deliver basic services to residents in their areas. To what extent does this particular project work to convince people that there is going to be a radical change at that level of their lives, rather than just promises that 5 to 20 years from now, your life will be better?
Lulu, do you agree with that?
Well, definitely, if we look at the history, there's been some underspending happening, especially if you look at the local municipalities and at the provincial level, where government and the private sector work together. Strangely enough, that's been the worst area. So for us to say that that private sector will necessarily make the big difference also would be not the right solution. What we've seen is, unfortunately, in a lot of instances, the budgets have been allocated, but the capacity is not always there to spend them really at the ground level, at the provinces and at the municipalities.
All right, we'll pick up on that issue on this special Newsnight debate on infrastructure development. Two issues here, underspending in terms of infrastructure budget. I also want to explore this thing or this body called the Presidential Infrastructure Coordinating Commission. This is Newsnight, and we'll be back with the debate in just a moment.
Know more about your world.
eNCA.com.